Life is way too short to focus on all that's wrong with the world. I'm Thomas Roberts.
We're here for you. We love you. We see you. We hear you. We know you're there.
We got good news. We got good news, yeah. Gay good news. You don't have to choose. Good news, yeah.
You know, the very thing that everyone around you is telling you is your liability, is your service.
This is Gay Good News. Give me 30 minutes and I'll give you a rainbow.
Hey everybody, it is great to have you with me today, and I apologize for running a few minutes late. You can tell that it's a new set, and I'll not give you a hint about where I am. But I tried to make it a little bit like home. You can see over here, I brought the microphone, Linda Carter, and Patrick. Mom and Aunt Pat, I'm sorry, you didn't make the cut. The pictures were too big. I thought the glass would break. But anyway, it is great to have you with me today, and we have a really great show for you. Shaun T is a person that we've all kind of grown up with, for those of us that are like Gen X and younger, because he hit the scene in like the mid-2000s as a celebrity fitness trainer, and everybody wanted to look like him because he looked so great. But we're going to sit down and talk to him and his husband, Scott, coming up in just a moment. But the first thing we need to celebrate today is the fact that it is International Left-Handers Day. Raise your left hand. Yeah, so there's only 11% of the population that would be left-handed, and that was me. I made that little left-hand thumbs up earlier today. So celebrate those left-handers in your life. I'm the only one in my family that's left-handed, except for my cousin Lisa on my father's side. I think I'm the only left-handed person, which is kind of interesting. I mean, I know people that they're left-handed. They've married other left-handed people. They've had left-handed kids. I don't really know where it came from in my family. I mean, the story was that my mother's mom, my mom, went to parochial school, Catholic school, and she used her left hand. But the nuns would beat her with a ruler when she used her left hand because it was evil, and so she became right-handed. I mean, it's kind of a wild story, but it's true. She had like big knuckles to prove it. So the other big story that I want to talk about is Kamala Harris. As we all know, this has been a very big week for the senator from California, as she has been chosen by Joe Biden to be his running mate. So on the day that Biden picked Kamala Harris, 8 years ago, it was when Mitt Romney picked Paul Ryan, which was really interesting. So that memory came up for me on Facebook, and so I looked at it, and then I started poking around and looking at what announcements had been made, because the Veep stakes was still going on. So I want to go back to before they announced. And so I read this piece about staffing had already begun, not only for Biden, but for the vice presidential pick, but they hadn't named who the person was yet. All right, so enter Karine Jean-Pierre, formerly of MoveOn.org, and then joined the Biden campaign, right? And last summer, you'll recall that she defended Kamala Harris from a heckler who rushed the stage. It was during the primary, and you can see her right there, move on in. All right, so Karine has been recently, there was a feature done on her in Out magazine. She is out, she is proud, she is lovely. I used to talk to her all the time on MSNBC, and now she is staffing Kamala Harris. So there was this interesting nugget, right? That I gave a prediction because this nugget about former NBC News analyst and Obama White House alum Karine Jean-Pierre will serve as the chief of staff for the VP pick. So I said, if this is the case, it's going to be Kamala Harris, all because of the fact that she jumped out of her seat to defend her. And look over here. There. That way. Karine liked the tweet. She liked it. right? And then it was confirmed, and it was official. So that's big news. So we have representation right there within the Biden team, tippy top among the ticket. And I think that out of all the people, maybe you're thinking differently, but out of all the people that could have been selected, as Joe Biden had announced, kind of the type of person that he wanted to run with, a person of color, a female, she might have the best it factor, to do it. And the pedigree, when you think about, the day one stuff, she was pretty tough on that stage. And I think the debates against Mike Pence are going to be really interesting when she goes to prosecute the case. All right, so I want to move on now to Shaun T. All right, so he is a fitness trainer, a celebrity fitness trainer, and he's now in his 40s. He is married. He has 2 kids. But coming up and on infomercials. Remember those late at night? The Insanity or the T25 infomercials. You didn't know that Shaun was gay. I didn't know Shaun was gay, and I didn't know that it wasn't really a secret. He came out in a retweet when he got married almost 8 years ago. So someone at his wedding in October of 2012 had posted pictures. And so he retweeted it of his own wedding, and that was him coming out. But we don't know everything about Shaun T, and certainly don't know everything about kind of a hard knock life he had coming up. He's a sexual abuse survivor. He is someone that, you'd never know what to look at him because he's got this great positive attitude and outlook on everything. But we had a really kind of interesting and tough conversation. This is going to be a 2-parter for you because it was that good. And Scott, his husband, Scott Blocker, is also in the interview. And we had such a good time. And they're so nice, right? And so willing to share their knowledge that this is going to be a 2-parter. I'm really excited to welcome this next couple to Gay Good News. I've been fascinated by one of them for a long time. And then when I found out they're married, there's 2 of them, I've become obsessed. Please welcome Shaun T and Scott Blocker. Scott, Shaun, great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Just a little side note. I'm glad you introduced me as Shaun T, but when we got married, I actually changed my last name to Blocker. So I'm Shaun Blocker too. And I happen to be the only Shaun Blocker in the world.
That's true.
Which is really why I changed my last name. I'm just kidding.
Really?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Well, I mean, Blocker is kind of a unique name, at least in the United States. It's Dutch-based, and over the years there have been more Blockers added to the realm, if you will. But I really don't believe there's an SHAUN Blocker.
When I searched mine 8 years ago when we got married, I was the only one.
There you have it.
And I didn't search again. So,
So
right
in
now,
essence,
I'm the only one. It's what I know.
But I would say you're probably, you're the only Shaun T too. I mean, you're pretty original when it comes to how we have all come to know you. Just explain, how did you break in to becoming this fitness icon?
Ooh, it's a long story. I'm trying to think how I broke in. I think it was more about just decisions that I made in my life that, made me move to Los Angeles, which was a big decision for me because I worked in the corporate world back out east. And then just like really staying focused on being a world-renowned fitness presenter. So I traveled all over the world, almost every continent before anyone had even seen my workout videos, so I had been in the fitness scene from the time I was like 20 to the time I was, my first program came out, maybe 28. And I was so focused on just being an amazing group exercise instructor, teaching at conventions, teaching in gyms. It was a really big thing. And so when I moved to LA and I had all of that experience under my belt, I was teaching at Equinox in West Hollywood, which at the time was the Equinox to be teaching at, and so my classes were packed. My Saturday morning class, like people showed up like an hour before, and
now, this is on Sunset, the Equinox on Sunset.
Sunset Boulevard.
Yeah.
It's in Westwood. And so it was kind of cool because it was just like the happening spot in LA. There's producers and directors and all these people rolling in and out and actors and whatever. And so a producer from Beachbody saw my class and she would watch it all the time. And she said, hey, do you think you'd be interested in doing a fitness program? And I was like, sure. But the funny story is when I actually went to my audition for Beachbody, they gave me this whole spiel on, you know, how you're supposed to be on camera and this, that, and the third. And I'm like, do you know who I am? I'm like, I'm not changing for the camera. I was like, once I came out at 21 years old, I was going to be me no matter what. Literally. So anyway, before I left that audition, they had like told me, oh, we want you to do this. And then I created my first program with them, which was Hip Hop Abs, which was really fun. It was different. It was simple but effective. And so that kind of started the snowball effect of me creating more programs with them. And you know, I think the rest is history now. And then when Insanity came out,
Oh yeah,
either crazy or they either hated me or they loved me. And so,
Or both.
you know, when you know,
yeah, they hate to love you and love to hate you. But
Yeah.
Scott, so did you first meet Shaun 10 years ago, or did you know about Shaun T?
I didn't know who he was when I met him. I remember Hip Hop Abs, but I
Mhm.
didn't know them together. I thought, okay, I always wanted to learn how to dance. I always wanted to be a backup dancer in a music video. I thought that would have been really cool. And when Hip Hop Abs came, I thought, this is gonna be my gateway into, not really, but I was like, this is where I'm gonna learn how to kind of be
This is
dancing.
your vehicle to get into being a backup dancer in a music video.
I don't think I ever bought the DVD, or maybe someone gave it to me, but I gave it away to a friend to borrow it, and I never actually ever did it. And then years later, I met him, and I didn't know who he was when I met him.
when I met him, and I was just like, wow, this is really amazing and crazy, and it feels different than anything I ever felt before.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm a very expressive person, whereas, you know, I told him that right away. I thought he was going to like run away and be like, oh my gosh, like you're moving too fast. Oops.
Stage 5 clinger.
20.
Yeah, it was. And you know, when you feel that same way and you have these emotions when they leave you, you're like, oh wow, like I'm feeling the same thing. And it was a free space. Like, again, I'd never met anyone who allowed me to be me. And I personally don't feel like, even though I kind of came out to people when I was 34, when I met him at 38, I felt like, and I tell the story that previous to meeting him, I was living life in black and white. And when I met him, my life changed into color. Like, it was because I was able to be me for the first time in all of my life, where it didn't matter. He was going to love me for me no matter what. And I could do and say whatever, as long as I was being authentic to myself. And that, for the first time at 38, was like mind blowing that I could be me. And
I'll bet. I mean, the confidence, the self-empowerment that must come with that.
Yeah.
And knowing that you've met somebody you're in love, that you see a future with, that is really special. And yeah, and you're right. You've been in, when you said earlier, you've been in relationships before, and you've asked people, what is it like to fall in love? I mean, you just know when you know, it's like a ton of bricks when it hits you.
I want to give the listeners something a little more juicy. It's all
dang,
nice.
Go.
But the first night
we're going to get back to the internet hookup here in a second. I just wanted to let the love story blossom for a moment.
I'll wait for you.
Yes, he ain't going to let that drop.
Yeah. So both of you were in New York, because Shaun, you're out in LA, you're becoming Shaun T, but then you end up in New York, right?
So
and that's where you guys meet.
Yeah. So when I finished my second fitness program, I just started to get like over LA. I was just like, it was just a lot. It was always traffic, dry. And I had spent the first few years being there really hustling. I was getting up at 4:45 every day to teach like a 7 o'clock class, to beat the traffic. Then, just the whole thing, moving from place to place, roommate to roommate. I had a condo, but I didn't own it. I was renting. I was just doing a whole bunch of stuff while still, at the time I was still only 28, 29 years old. So I was still pretty young, And I was like, I want to move back to New York because I'm from the East Coast, I'm from Jersey, and I just needed to feel that. I just need to feel that East Coast energy. And so I moved back to the East Coast when to create Insanity. And so that's kind of when I moved back, and it was just, I hate the winters there, but outside of that, it was my place. I just loved it there. I still love it there. It's still my favorite city.
Yeah, I mean, New York is great, and I understand. We lived in LA for about 3 years before ending up in New York, and I know what you mean. I mean, it's a beautiful. The weather's great, right? Weather's great, but traffic, and it can be a grind, and everybody's always like looking over your shoulder for the next important person that's coming in the room. Trying to figure out what do you do? How can you help me?
Yeah, I know. I was like more like, I mean, I have some amazing friends there, great friends, and I'm still friends with those people. But it just kind of always felt like you said, they're looking over your shoulder. It's like, hey, I'm right here. Hello. But it is what it is. I was younger. If I was there now, I'd probably have a different perspective in terms of who I spend my energy with, and you can read into that stuff. But as a young person, I was like, yeah, I'm not really interested in sticking into this situation for that much longer.
Well, so life brings you back. 2010 is a big year for both of you with meeting, but then within 2 years, right? By October of 2012, you're getting married. So you were able to consolidate basically the issues of relationships that you may have been in to focus on one another.
Yeah, I think a lot of it really came from therapy. Like we both have been in therapy for a pretty extensive amount of time. And even in the beginning of our relationship, I was still battling with my past sexual abuse. I'm a sexual abuse survivor. So I was still kind of juggling with what love really is. I mean, obviously there's the reality of what but then if you haven't really tapped into the past, into the things that really affect you in a negative way, a lot of that baggage can creep into what's good. And so, it was I think in the beginning of our relationship, but for both of us, it was a great learning curve that took a lot of patience. It took a lot of dealing with internal pain and literally looking in the mirror and understanding what it is that you're going through and being honest with yourself.
Yeah.
But it definitely, I think a lot of people think like, oh, you have this amazing love story and wow, but it comes with work. Yeah. And I think that's what, not to skip too far ahead, but I think that's what makes us be able to be at this point now, is having worked on ourselves so much that to be able to communicate in such a transparent way really helps a relationship. Because even when we get in fights now, because I'm from the East Coast, I gotta cuss them out every once in a while. But I'm just kidding. But even in our lovers' quarrels now, there's still a great deal of what we learned and how to communicate to not keep us in that space for a really long time. Yeah. So I think to your point, or I don't even know if you were asking that, but I think to your point in terms of in 2 years, it was a big change. We went from meeting to getting married. There was a lot of work that had been done individually and together to get to the point of, saying I do.
So Shaun, for you though, and I'm sorry that you suffered any abuse as a kid. When did you start dealing with that? Is it because you met Scott and you wanted to tackle any issues with that head on, or had you already been trying to deal with some of that?
No, I've been dealing with it for a while. When I met Scott, I had finished with my first therapist. He was amazing. I had this amazing therapist, and he was gay. So it was really easy to talk to him. But then, I feel like at one point I graduated, from his work. And then I felt really, really good. I think that's the thing. But then when I got into a relationship, a true loving relationship, that's when I had to go to therapy again, because I was at a different point in my life. When I went to him, it was, being gay, coming out as gay. A lot of times it was about just, health and HIV and being afraid to like even have sex. And it was a lot of things that crept into that. Even now, we're watching the show Pose on Netflix that brings up a lot of those issues when you're waiting in the waiting room to get your test results and all that. It brings back a lot of those things that I was dealing with when I was with my first therapist. But then once I got in a relationship and found out what true love, I had to actually separate what sexual abuse love was, what was being abused by someone who said they love you, and being loved by someone who loved you for who you are. It was to take those two apart was a very challenging thing. And my second therapist, she was amazing, incredible. I actually think I taught her a lot about being gay. She was not gay. She had nothing. She was in New York. She was obviously, open-minded, but I think I was her first gay client. And so it actually caused me I was like kind of teaching or just opening up about what it is. Maybe she did that on the low. Maybe she asked me about what it was to be gay for me to accept what it is, Yeah. Maybe I have to reach back out to her.
It's interesting though, that, I found, because I'm also a sexual abuse survivor, and I didn't deal with it until I was in my early 30s because it was presenting problems in my relationship with my now husband. And I picked a woman that I thought was a lesbian for the sake of, one, not being comfortable talking about being abused by a man, but also that I didn't trust, because my abuse situation happened out of being in therapy with a priest. And I didn't want anybody to have any type of access to me in a vulnerable moment, and sexuality being involved. It's hard to talk about those things and to dive into those issues, because, as a survivor, I've come to learn, now in my mid 40s, late 40s, that there's PTSD involved with that. Yeah. And unless you really work on it, like you're talking about, unless you do the work, it can really fuck you up.
Yes, it can.
And we talk about something that if you don't address it, it's going to manifest itself in other ways. It's kind of like a volcano, right? If it can't go through the top, it's going to go through the side or the other side, diagonally or whatever. So it's
going to get through.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah, it's going to get through. So Scott, how has that been for you to understand Shaun trying to separate that of knowing your love coming from, a genuine place as an equal, as a partner, as a husband, as opposed to how he described it, this love for someone that's actually taking advantage of you?
Well, I mean, this is the first time I'm hearing him say, he had to, or maybe it's the first time I'm understanding and it's sinking in that he had to differentiate between the love of the abuser to mine. Regardless, I knew the struggles that I had gone through trying to deal with my sexuality. And I thought to myself, I'm going to help him do whatever it takes, because I love him with all my heart. So we're going to get through it. And I think my therapist was the one that recommended your therapist or something or whatever. But I was like, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter to me because of the love that I have for him. So we're going to get through it. And so it was challenging. And I talked about it in my sessions too, about how, there were times when we would get into fights and it didn't make any sense. And then he figured it out and we talked about it. And it's like, wow, that's mind blowing. That's PTSD. That is all of those things. And it's like, it just, to be 100% honest, it made me love him even more, because it's like, he is going through something that no one else can understand, right? Lots of people go through what you have been through or what you've been through and make choices that do not lead them to where they are today, right? They're in other situations, and to be able to want to address it and talk about it and examine it and move forward and become stronger because of it is mind blowing. Like, to me, it's that's why I want to do everything I can. It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah. So I think, I'll be honest about it. I struggle because I say I'm a survivor. But I sometimes I feel like people think or know my story and think of me as a victim, and that gets to me, not to have that victim tape playing in my head, to have the survivor tape on at all times. Do you struggle with that?
Not anymore. I did struggle with that a long time until I realized that I had to like really compartmentalize what, who was in control at the time. I mean, for me, I was 8 years old when this all started. So I wasn't pursuing that person, right? So, and then the other thing was, which is really, it's kind of crazy when I tell people this, but at a very young age, I had to tell myself, I'm not going to be a victim. Like, I'm not going to act like a victim. I put myself in a role in which I felt I could, support. So I had to trick my mind when I was younger. I used to say, the reason why I'm not running to the church or the police is because I want to protect my family. Because I truly believe that this person would have we would have been on the news, like he would have shot up the entire house, right? So I was like, how can I take this opportunity? And I'm young, but I remember saying, how can I take this opportunity to protect everyone else?
Right.
And then me in a role of just like control, if you will. And then when I got older, I definitely experienced the PTSD, but I just refused to make myself a victim because I felt like for me, that would have been a step back. Now, there could have been times in there where I acted like that, but I think mentally, I just always was like, I need to have control over the situation while still being, while still going through the struggle of what it is that I went through.
Yeah.
I think that we as sexual abuse survivors or people or victims, if you will, we immediately take on the blame and we try to figure out why it was our fault instead of saying to ourselves, why is it not my fault?
Right.
Like, and if the moment you change the conversation, I talk a lot about the soundtrack in your mind. It's like when you're working out, if you're like, fuck, this is hard, I don't want to do this, Shaun T gets on my nerves, then the whole work, you're going to be like, oh my gosh. But if you're like, let's go. Even if it sucks, if you're like, I got this, I'm going to push through. It just changes the direction of your mindset. And so, I was able to really do that. I think just because from the time I was 8 to the time I was 12, I was being molested in the middle of the night very often. So it was, it was crazy. And then eventually I ended up moving out of my house when I was 14 years old and, changing, that whole situation. But I definitely had to tell myself early that I wasn't a victim, but not everybody has that mental strength, and that's why on my arms, I actually have Conquer Your Mind, Transform Your Life, because from a very young age, I was like, oh my gosh, like if I lose it up here, I'm toast,
Right.
All right, so we leave you there on that cliffhanger. Aren't they great? I mean, they are really, really excellent people. They're so kind and they're generous in their knowledge. And there's a second half to this interview because we get to talk about their struggle with becoming parents. And they started, so they got married, in the end of 2012, and right away in 2013, they wanted to start a family. And they worked for years at this. And they've got these two beautiful baby boys, Silas and Sander. You're going to learn about the boys. You're going to learn about paternity and how they've worked this out and the difficulty and the cost involved. A lot of us, I said to them, a lot of us came into this world, a six-pack in the back of a pickup truck, and fertility costs, they are no joke for any couple, straight, gay, lesbian, anybody that wants to be a parent that goes through that. But that part 2 will be next Thursday. Also, I'm going to give you a tease for tomorrow because there's some big news coming tomorrow at 11 a.m. that involves me. It's going to be great. It's going to be good gay news. We're going to break into coverage here on Facebook. So that is going to be tomorrow at 11. Something really good that I'm proud to share with you. But I have to wait till 11. I couldn't get it on today. But we are out of time. So I want to thank you all and encourage you to check out our YouTube channel. And we've got fresh links up there. And then part 2 of Shaun T next week. Bye from New York.